Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Reading Grant Morrison podcast. It's the Grant Morrison podcast. I am doing the intro because my man Gray here is drunk. What up, Gray?
Hey, how's it going? A Merry Christmas to you, Jim, and to everyone out there.
I don't want to make it sound like you're like a stumbling drunk here or anything. It's just you at a Christmas party, so you ended up having some sake, some fun. Also, you're sick. So you have a lot of things going on. So I'm not shaming you like I would Luke Hollywood. That's the thing. You're just standard deal. And it is the holidays, but it's kind of a fun thing because I don't know that I could end up doing anything like Invisibles if I was, under the influence. Maybe that would help, but maybe that would be more
into the wind.
Like psychedelic stuff. But for a Christmas deal, or a holiday deal, it is pretty good because that means you're full out Yankee. You're ready to go. It's funny, too, because when we usually do some things, I'm the one who does the intro, but not in this one, and it's throwing me off. Does this mean I have to end it as well? Because I'm not very good
You've got to come up
with
a catch line, a tagline, Jim, at the end. But just let people know out there. Basically, I went to a Christmas party, but in Japan it's called a Bonenkai, and that translates as forget the year party, Jim, because we forget the year. Everyone gets drunk. That's it.
Yeah, and forget the night the next day.
Forget the night.
That's
exactly
what happens. You're like, what the heck did I do? I was hoping you were going to say in Japan it's one of those things. It's almost like the Purge, but it's the Purge for like manners. Like you're allowed to do anything you want that one night. Like you can actually be mean to people. And
it's the one night that
the
the employees can be kind of like, a little bit, hey, to the boss. It really is. And you can get away with it. That's how it works.
That's cool. That's pretty cool. That's what I was thinking it might be. So actually I did have it in mind what it actually ends up being. So that's cool.
You got it.
We decided that for our Grant Morrison stuff, we would get more of the holiday spirit.
Yes.
And it works out because he does Klaus. And when we were talking about it, I have already done on my Patreon the Klaus, the whole deal. Me and Stork did it for our book of the month last year. So I asked you, do you want to just do these one-shots? He has a bunch of one-shots with it. And I was worried. I was worried that when we jumped into this, like, maybe they're not going to be as good as the series, which really is Santa Claus Year One. And it's funny, there's some things that I'll mention in this that I ended up thinking, and then you end up like, oh my God, Grant Morrison even said that's kind of the deal. That whole Santa Claus Year One is nothing I came up with. They had really pushed Klaus as being that. So it's really cool. In this one, though, I was worried, again, that maybe it would be something that you couldn't grab onto, that, I didn't read the people listening, if they didn't read the 7 issues, if you haven't, whatnot. But it actually is pretty good as a standalone deal. I mean, it's one of those things that it's Santa Claus, so you kind of know some of the things, right? And it's
exactly.
That crazy mythology around it. And it's a lot of Grant Morrison making up stuff. But I think that one of the things that intrigued me before I do the credits here is that you have a lived-in world that if you're reading this, and if you do go and read this as a one-shot, don't worry. The things that he mentions in this, and I mean Klaus, they didn't really happen. They happen, but there's no stories
Jim,
with it.
I came into this as a one-shot because I've not read the preceding 7 issues, and I was fine. I was in there. I was like, okay, this is Santa Claus, this is Klaus. I was in, as you say, the world building is really good, but he eases you in, doesn't he? He doesn't drop you right in. It's fine.
And it's cool because he mentions some things in the beginning that you would think, holy moly, that sounds awesome. I mean, we'll get into it, but it almost feels like Star Wars at a point where there's things that are mentioned that have already gone on that are kind of a backdrop that are really neat. But it is Klaus, The Witch of Winter, #1. Is a one-shot, oversized one-shot. It's written by Grant Morrison, and art by Dan Mora. I think I'm drunk. It was originally released December 21st, 2016. So we jump into it. And when I first read it, I'm telling you, it took me 2 readings to really it's not that it was difficult. It just ends up, there's a lot of little things. There's a lot of things going on here. And when I first read it, it was also very late at night. So I ended up rereading it. And when I got done, I thought, you know what this feels like to me is a lot like Doctor Who, where you have Santa Claus and he returns from this moon war.
Interesting
and
take.
Again,
I like that.
If you end up watching Doctor Who, and they mention a lot of the Time War in the whole deal with that, but you don't really ever see it's just mentioned, and it's a big backdrop, and that's where I got the play. So when we were going to do this, just to say it on the video out loud, I was worried that maybe people call it Claus and not Klaus. So I've always said Klaus. So I ended up looking up a video just to see here. If I hear one other person say Klaus, I'm in. So I type in, I do this thing. And what ended up coming up was a promo video that had some interviews and things with Grant Morrison. And what he said at the beginning was, when me and Dan Mora got together, we ended up talking about the comics and things we like. And we wanted Santa Claus here to be a year one Santa Claus, like I said before, but like Superman or mainly Doctor Who. And I was like, I really got that vibe from it. So I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, that's how it is.
Jim, I'm so impressed that you know Doctor Who so well. Like, is that your British background? Yeah,
it is one of my British background things. I ended up watching as a kid the Tom Baker stuff.
Oh my God, Tom Baker is my Doctor too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was a little though, because it's kind of cheesy. It is dated now, but back then it was on PBS here in the US. And first off, PBS is like that's the educational channel. So when you go, but I'd also watch Mighty Python. They play a lot of stuff on the weekends, and I'd go by and I'd watch a little Doctor Who, and it kind of intrigued me a little. But then the reboot deal, I actually got into it because of Eric. Into it from that. And I really liked it.
It was famous, Jim, for being shot on a real shoestring budget. You were laughing at it. It was like, it's paper mache walls kind of thing, shot in a quarry, like really dodgy monster suits. But the stories were good. The writing was very good.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, though, and I would go by, I kind of hinged on the idea of like, this looks really cheesy. Like, look at those things. They're made of, cardboard and things.
Exactly.
But now I realize it was a little more. Like you said, it was the stories that kept going. So with that, though, the regenerations and things like that, it's kind of a play here where Klaus comes through this door and he mentions that I was fighting in this moon war, the Moontians and Lunalopolis. He's going on and on about these chains. Yeah, so there's that background. Again, almost like a Star Wars Doctor Who deal as well. Like, he comes in and he crashes on this guy's house. And he says, I hit something, and then I came down. He's ripping away these chains of this moon metal, the moon platinum. He's getting that off.
I just want to hear you say Luna Luminum. I can't even say it, Jim. Go on, say it.
Luna Luminum.
It's so good.
It's so cool. So you get that. But again, if you're jumping into this there's no story with that, at least yet, as I know. This is just the cool play of this is where I was. He's been gone decades. So this is kind of more, it is modern times. And so he's there saying, oh my God, what time is it? Again, it's like a regeneration. When you have Doctor Who kind of checks if he has red hair, if he's a male, female, all that stuff. So he's like, yeah, you have a phone. What time is it? And this guy's freaking out. Like, he ends up hitting Klaus with
I love
bat.
that, yeah. He swipes him, he whacks him with a baseball bat or something, doesn't he? That's such a great introduction.
Yeah, and it just shatters, and he's like looking at it. And I mean, the way he's dressed would give you a hint that something's up. But then he even says, oh, I crashed. I hit something, crashed on your roof. The bump you heard that ended up alerting him was my sleigh. He's like, a sleigh? You have a sleigh? He thinks he's crazy or whatnot, but his kids are missing. He has a son and a daughter, and he says, my kids are missing. I'm going to call the police. And Klaus says, oh, no. I bumped into a flying snowman. That's what abducted your children. You'll never find them. I'm going to have to go find them. And this guy wants to go. At that point, then, it does look like he's like grabbed a beer and he's drinking it down. Like, Klaus is there. He's trying to kind of get going here, get a little, energy. But he ends up where Lilli, his wolf, comes in, and this whole play, this guy says, oh, if you're going after my kids, I'm going with you. I'm going to go with you. And
Lilli is gorgeous, by the way. She's a gorgeous white husky. Look at her.
Yeah,
great.
And bigger than a normal deal. And it makes sense from the beginning. So you end up having all this. And Dan Mora's art's really good. We said this is 2016. He's better now. I mean, it's still
great. What do you reckon,
great.
Jim? This is early Dan Mora. What do you think of it? Like, because we've seen, we're comparing it to like how we see him now, doing World's Finest. Or for me, it was what was that series you did with Kieran Gillen? Oh my God, I can't remember the name. Like the Arthurian mythos one, yeah.
Once and Future.
That's it, Once and Future. That was my introduction to him. Yeah, that was amazing.
It's really, really
it's
good.
It's very good. It's a lot better than a lot of things we see these days. Yeah.
Yeah, and you do even have Dan Mora with color assist by Doug Campos that I didn't say earlier, and Dukeshire, nice. And maybe that was the play. Maybe it's the coloring as well. It doesn't pop as much as it doesn't.
No, you can tell it's early Dan Mora, can't you? You can tell it's early.
But it's still really good.
It's still really good.
It still looks fantastic, and the character design of Klaus is just great, and even some of the other characters are really, really good. And again, when you read this, we have to kind of and I had to remind myself, because we've been doing the Morrison stuff and it's Invisibles and Doom Patrol. Like, this is a fairy tale, and it's that like feel good type deal, but it does have that gritty folktale play of it, but it's not as mind bending.
It's not crazy. It's not. Yeah, exactly. It's not mind bending, is it? No.
Yeah, it's. I think that Grant Morrison is this is a holiday tale. He wants a lot of people to enjoy it, but it's still really like an adventure story. And his Klaus really they should make movies and TV shows out of it. Like, if they had like a mini series that came out around this time of year, it'd be so cool. It'd be so awesome. But
Jim, there is an animated movie, but I thought it was about this character, but it's not. It's called Klaus, but I thought it was based on Grant Morrison, but it's not, is it?
I had the same thing. I went and I was so excited, and it's more of more of just like a kid's thing. That's a little less. So,
disappointed.
Yeah, I would love this. Because I talk about it. Right now we have Batman Santa Claus coming out from DC.
Oh God, how good is that right now? It's so good.
I love a kick-ass Santa Claus. It's so much fun. And Grant does a lot of things in this that even, is way more intricate and developed than, say, the Jeff Parker thing, that you don't have enough room really to go through all of it. But you end up with this. It's really cool. And he puts the guy to sleep. He wants to go and help save his kid, but he ends up snapping his fingers.
I know. His dad's like, I want to go with you. Like, no, you need to sleep. Snap. And he's gone.
And what I like about it, too, he talks about the play. When you end up, he says, I've been gone for decades, and you have what would normally be a reaction from an adult or a kid, like, come on now, how could you deliver presents, all in one night? And he actually says, I used to, but I use backup now. I don't really do that. I haven't done that for a while. I let the parents take care of it. So it actually works out in that crazy way.
I think that's such Santa a good
Claus,
way, to explain it. Yeah, it's really good.
But it makes sense. And then when he snaps his fingers to put the guy to sleep, it works to me because that would be a power that he'd probably have. If he came in, if there was a Santa Claus and he came into the house and you were awake, well, I'm going to stay up and like kids, I'm going to stay up and wait for Santa Claus.
If you saw him, what would you do?
He would come in and snap, right? So you'd fall asleep. But how many times have kids, I'm going to stay up all night to see Santa Claus, and then the next morning you wake up on Christmas Day and go, oh man, I fell asleep.
I had a crazy dream last night, Jim. I dreamt I saw Santa Claus.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Like, that would be that, you didn't actually fall asleep. Santa Claus came in and snapped his fingers and said, go to sleep, and you went to sleep. But we go then with the kids, and you have Naomi and Ben, girl and a boy, real little, the boy especially, but they've been captured, and they've been taken off to what was one of Santa's workshops that's kind of been repurposed into a horror show, where they come out of what looks like a box, a big door. Yeah. They open it up, and there are all of these wooden, like, soldiers. They're on conveyor belts.
It's such a weird place, isn't it, to start with? Like, you're not sure where they are. It's like, as you say, like, weird, very kind of scary.
It looks like a giant wooden men, like, factory that they're coming down the assembly line, and they come out, and then, again, if this was animated, it'd be really cool, because as they come out, and they're like, oh my God, we got to get out of here, all of a sudden, all of these figures come to life, even the ones on the conveyor belt. They sit up, and you end up like Ben's like, I want to go home.
Ben's like, I don't like it.
Yeah. Naomi has to be like the protector, but she's scared too. And
she's scared too.
And even when you have a play, it's really well done. You have the father, and he's dressed up as Santa. Like, he's doing his whole thing. He's going to put gifts down, but just imagine your kids are kidnapped on Christmas Eve. I mean, that is so awful. And
It is. It's a nightmare. It's every parent's worst nightmare.
it is. So then you go, and the girl, she has this pendant. Now, it is a snowflake, and she says, Mom's pendant always brings us good luck. And you kind of get that feel right away. It's like, yeah, and even when the dad says, this is the second Christmas without their mom, I'm doing my best. Like, it's sad. You realize they've lost their mom, and the dad is trying to do his best. And this would be it would be tough at Christmas any year of anything. But if you had lost, your wife, a mother, it makes it worse because these were times where you have family. So I'm sure there is that bittersweet deal. And then the kids get kidnapped. And then the girl mentions this pendant, which kind of comes into play in a little bit as well. But all of a sudden, they just look like they're overtaken by these wooden figures, these wooden men. And the ones in the shadow look a little worse.
Jim, how good is that panel there? It's so good, isn't it, how it sets it up? It looks very, very scary for them.
Yeah. And they're like, I'm going to go home. And then you have from off panel going somewhere. And then we go off to...
Then we switch back to Klaus, yeah.
And he's there. You have Lilli, the main, but they're being driven by wolves. His sleigh's really cool. And it ends up getting shot down. Looks like by a giant cannonball. It comes and hits them, and they actually crash. And again, there are parts where when Klaus is yelling as they're going to crash, when the colors really pop there, you're like, yeah, that's really good, Dan Mora. But when they crash, you have Klaus and Lilli looking like, what the heck's happening? They're trying to get their bearings. And all of a sudden you see from the distance a horde just coming. And it's like this ice army, with clubs and knives and, spikes, all these things coming to get them.
Well, Jim, can I ask you here, you get, as you say, there's 3 pages of, almost pure visual storytelling. There's hardly any dialogue. How good is it here, Dan Mora?
So good.
Yeah, he lands it, doesn't he? He lands it really well.
And I love that, the play where you are on this, desolate, because they're at the North Pole, it seems, at this point, then you have fire with that, and it really pops.
It pops out big time, yeah. It looks so good.
And you get to see that, yes, Santa Claus is pretty tough. I mean, he is a tough guy, so he is fighting, Lilli's fighting with him, but he realizes these ice monsters, these snow monsters, they're actually wooden puppet men that are kind of covered in snow and things. So when he's fighting them, they kind of end up, and he recognizes them, and he says, wooden puppets, there's something about them that's familiar. I recognize this work, but this would be impossible. The person who would make these would never make something bad.
Only one man could have done this, yeah.
Yeah, and it throws them. And it's so cool because when you're thinking about that, you're like, okay, well, we'll see what's going on. And it is Santa, so maybe it'll be some elf, or maybe it'll be, some crazy deal. But when you find out what it is, it almost feels
Ferrell,
like... Yeah, exactly. It almost feels like at one point, it shouldn't be as cool as it is when we find out, but it's so cool because then he gets trapped. This is all of this is a setup and a trap to get Santa Claus to the workshop.
Well, Jim, this is one of the parts where I didn't quite get this. You got from, of course, Klaus is so strong, and then suddenly he's like, does he get hit by a webbing or some kind of web? Suddenly he's like, oh, why do I feel so weak? I just didn't get that.
You get the web, and it does have this electricity on it, and it lands on him. And the thing that I didn't understand was, we don't really know what maybe that means.
No,
this
we don't
web,
know
but,
yeah.
But wouldn't you think that it might be the web? That's the old,
Yeah, exactly. It's why do I suddenly feel so weak? It's
I think it might be that. And I think that what they're playing with here, because it almost looks like electricity that's coming out of it, but maybe that's more of that frost magic, because even later there's parts where they're going to get him with an ice spike to pretty much make him so that he couldn't do anything, and he loses power again later because of that pendant, but we'll get to that because he gets taken down, and they end up dragging him to, again, at one point when they're going towards it and things, Klaus says to that's our old factory. This is one of our old workshops. Somebody's rebuilt it and rebuilt it bad. So you end up with all this stuff. But again, you get mention of a lot of things in here that are really cool, like the Dungeon of No Escape, the Forbidden Grotto. These are things that end up being, and I like this play because you end up having what it is, it's the Witch of Winter. It's this witch who has taken over, and what was Santa's workshop is now just dark and cold, and all the, everything around it is just spikes of ice and just frost and things like that, which I really think is cool. But you end up like, at this point, I did think, why those kids get kidnapped? Why those kids? And we find out it's a trap. That's all it was. It was a trap to get them. But it is funny too. Now I realize how cool the other thing is, because I didn't really. They did get kidnapped by a snowman too, which is really, really cool for the Witch of Winter to send out a snowman to capture these kids. But they get brought before the witch. They end up going, and it's sad. You end up with the little kid, Ben. It's so well done, because with the whole dialogue and things, he can't really say Naomi, so he says Nomi.
Nomi,
and it's
he's
so
saying
cute.
That.
Like, he's just a little kid, and her name's
Naomi. How cool is it? The
Nomi.
witch is sat on this like crazy ice throne, isn't it? Look at the size of that throne. It's a great image.
And isn't it cool? Like Dan Mora, he did it with those frost beings, the giants or whatever they were, where you see them at the distance. And you think, oh, what's that? That looks really neat. And even like, okay,
you're not sure what it is, are you?
You get closer and closer, and then see, and it's this giant throne of ice. And even like, if you look, you could even like make it look like a face with art. Like, it's so crazy.
Oh yeah,
but
exactly.
And again, it's all white. You have this whole white, grayish, dark. But then next to her, because she doesn't say anything, she's just sitting on a throne, almost like she's frozen into the throne. And you have this little elf dwarf guy next to her who actually does the talking, says, welcome. And he has this big spoon with green gook on it, and he's licking it. And
what the hell is he slurping on here?
Yeah, it's so crazy. And his name's Spoon Licker. So it makes sense. And it's so funny that he is one of Santa's elves that used to work in the workshop, but she has come here and kind of given him deals, and he says he got a promotion a little later. But this is where you're getting that play. He's a bad guy at this point, but it's so cool. It's like such a fantasy type deal, and I'm saying fantasy like these are like Grimm's fairy tales. Like,
yes,
everything
exactly.
isn't nice, right?
He's like, come into the darkness, come closer.
When you think of this, these little kids, they're being brought towards this witch of winter. And then there's this evil-looking dwarf or gnome, and he's licking this real awful green crap off a spoon. It's really disgusting and horrific in almost a cute way. It's so crazy. The first time I read it, I didn't really understand, because there's dark behind him. And then these two eyes pop up and like, no fears, we'll get you out of here. Not all of us work for the witch. And I thought, okay, that's cool, but aren't they a little too close? I mean, I thought at that point they were like really close, because they even get forced to kneel.
I wasn't even sure whose eyes these were. I thought it was the Spoon Licker's eyes.
Yeah. I thought it was
really
like some weird, like double a dual personality thing.
Yeah,
we find out that there are actually other elves who think that this is kind of bullcrap, what's going on, and they're going to fight back, which is cool. But yet you have all this going on, and then because Klaus, he got knocked out, it's a weird play here. He wakes up, and we get his point of view, and we see a stool with a guy's feet on it. And then you realize, as he wakes up, this guy's killing himself.
This is a crazy shift, and a crazy scene. It's like, where'd this come from?
Yeah. And it throws you off at first, but I think that's done on purpose. You're supposed to not understand, like, you're like Klaus, that suddenly you wake up trying to get your bearings and then see some guy. Oh my God, stop. And he realizes who it is then. He actually stops him from killing himself. And he says, my old apprentice, I'd recognized your work out there. So this is the guy he was talking about, saying, oh my God, nobody but this guy could do it. And it's Geppetto. And this is where I said, I'm like, why aren't I thinking, that's a little, I think it's cool. I'm like, oh my God, like Geppetto was Santa's apprentice in this, and he has now been forced to make these wooden, figures and breathe life into them, but not.
I'll tell you what, Jim, I don't know if I missed this in like the preview, the first 7 issues, whatever, but this is such an incredible reveal. Like, it's Geppetto, from Pinocchio. Geppetto's like, no way. How cool is that?
the first 7, that was year 1. That was him just kind of becoming Santa, realizing his deal in this, a town or, a village.
This is our first time to see Geppetto. Yeah?
First time I saw him. Yeah, you were more like trying to fight back against an evil guy who didn't want Christmas anymore,
right?
In a gritty way in the first deal, and you were seeing how he's learning his powers and things. So this is new, but it's really cool.
This is so cool.
And even then, Geppetto says, "Listen, I didn't want to do it for this witch, but and I love where Santa's like, you're real old. Like, you must be hundreds of years old. Santa's been around for a long time. And he says, you are you should be dead." And he's fashioned a lot of himself out of that living wood, the enchanted wood.
Enchanted wood. Look at his arm there. It's so weird looking.
He has his head and his heart. That's all that's left. But also, the Witch of Winter, she ended up casting a spell that as long as he stays frozen, as long as he stays cold, he doesn't age like normal. He ends up being able to he's not immortal. That's a big play, but he's not aging. But if you get near any sort of heat, he immediately starts aging. And that's kind of where a big concept of this is with the even Witch of Winter. The idea that she's usually asleep. She's usually not doing things like this, but they do play. And Grant throws in the idea of global warming, that because winters don't last as long, because some of the polar ice caps, they're melting, this has woken her up. And that's kind of why she's kind of out and about here. It's not, it's kind of why she's pissed off, but it's more of the play of, the people are attacking her. She's taking this as an affront. She's taking it personal. But even so, she has a reason with all of this going, because there's Geppetto. He's made of mostly wood. His heart and his head are the only things. He mentions it a couple times. He has this whole, spell, but he will die eventually. He can't live forever. And he's the one who makes these soldiers for her. We kind of got the play. Again, the really cool play is that you see him say, "You were my apprentice." So you know that then Santa can make those as well because of the toys and things like that. So that's the real play. This whole play is that the Witch of Winter wants to capture Santa Claus to make him the one who makes the wooden soldier army. But
right, that's
Geppetto is so upset. Like, he's going to kill himself. He doesn't want to do it anymore. And because of the idea that not only is it that I'm making these evil things, and it's almost like he uses the enchanted wood, the magic wood, he brings them to life, but they don't have really a soul. And it reminds him of Pinocchio and all this stuff, and he really doesn't like to do it. But they have also cut down a lot of the enchanted woods where it like kills them, that they are like wrecking house.
Well, that's it, Jim, isn't it? This is dark, isn't it? This kind of shocked me, this part, because as you say, like, our association with Geppetto is like, something very positive. He brought Pinocchio to life, but it's like, oh my God, the Geppetto in this is like, it's not the same thing.
No, and he's pretty sad.
He is sad.
And also, he's made of wood except for his head and heart, and I think he just wants to end it. But now Klaus shows up, and he's inspired a bit now. But as that's going on, because they are in the dungeon of no escape, but they're going to try to escape. Well, you end up having Spoonlicker show up in his boot car. And this looks like so Disney, but like kind of crazy. And if you look, the best thing about it is he is actually Tokyo drifting as he comes in. I mean, he is sliding across the deal in a drift.
It's true.
He is there. He's like pimping his ride. He loves it.
By the way, he's got like a flame in his hand. What do you call it? Like, a burning
torch, yeah.
Yeah, a torch in his hand. That's so cool.
He's drifting. Oh, man, I wish he was leaning out of the deal. He ends up where Klaus says, "Spoonlicker, like, why have you were one of my guys.
Like, what are you doing here?
Why are you doing this?" And she said, "This is what you need to, if you want to get Spoonlicker on your side, give him a boot car and give him unlimited spoons to lick." That's what he says. He says, and again, playing the joke of, some people say that Santa Claus is a great guy, but if you're one of the elves, he's kind of a slave driver. You're there making toys all year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
He says, "You work just like dogs. I like this. I like licking spoons and driving my boot car.
Spoons I can lick. Case closed."
Yeah, he says it. And you see, because Geppetto, the idea of that whole magic, he can't go against fire. If he gets near fire, which Spoonlicker pushes that
which
torch
is really
in his
cool.
face,
Yeah.
he ages a bit, and he does. You can see that from the beginning when he was trying to kill himself and Klaus stopped him, and then you get this torch. He has aged a bit, and that's where Santa says, "Hey, what happened? What's going on?" And he says, "Well, she preserved me, but if I end up getting heat around, I do age," which then sets up a pretty heroic thing for him to do. But this whole play, they were going to try to escape, but instead they're going to grab Santa because it's like, "Okay, Geppetto, you come with us." No, Santa's like, I'll do it. Klaus says, "I'll do it." And they tie him up and they take him back. And then even says that I'm barring the room with flame is what you have Spoonlicker say. So to get out of that room, you would have to, for him, almost die because of that flame, which is a big deal. But then you get a really cool spread page, and it comes to play like he's walking down, almost seems like the Rock of Eternity when you have that, because there's all these statues.
I can see that, Jim, yeah. One statue looks a bit like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, doesn't it?
And what's cool about this, if you even have the whole play, this is a deal where these are all different folklore versions of Santa. You have Santa on the goat, like the Asgardian deal. You have all these things, including Dead Moroz, that ends up, I forget what story, I just ended up reading it and had that version.
Don't forget Father Christmas, the UK version of Santa Claus. He's there.
Yeah, exactly. So you have all that. And I think maybe Dead Moroz was the one that was brought up, actually, in the Batman Santa Claus. I think that's that one.
Cool.
So, and if you look, it kind of does look so. These are just statues going down. It almost seems like, it'd be not a trophy room, but in remembrance of them. The big play here, though, is that we'll find out that these are made of that magic wood, and they were done by Santa. So they were done by Klaus. But as you go through here into this throne room, then you have where you see the Witch of Winter. You have all this, and you have Klaus being told to kneel. He won't kneel. He breaks through his chains just like Superman. Looks very Superman-esque because he just breaks the chains. And now it's going to be this play of how does he fight this Witch of Winter, because he suddenly starts losing his power.
I kneel to no power. It's a great scene, isn't it? It's so good.
And then in that, you see that the Witch of Winter, who really hasn't said anything yet, she has also taken over, or at least kind of subdued, Naomi, who now looks like she's like a ice princess to the witch, and her pendant is glowing, and you kind of get the idea right away, and you really get it a little bit from here, is that she's angry, especially around Christmas. She's angry that she doesn't have her mother, and so the witch is taking advantage of that, almost like she wants her to, you don't need that heart to think of things. And she says at the end, like, I kind of want to stay here because I miss my mom, things like that. But you have Ben who's just begging, please, Naomi, don't do this. All this stuff going on. But they revealed the plan is that Geppetto is going to die eventually. They need somebody to make those, puppet men. And that'll be Santa. And they're going to get an ice pick. They're going to put him there. And he's going to be the one who's now going to work at the workshop endlessly till the end of time, making this army for this Witch of Winter to then go attack the Earth because of, what they've done and the global warming. It sounds like it's not really pushed that much that way. It's done in a cool way.
It's not, is it? It's just part of the story, Jim, isn't it? They don't make a big deal of it. It's just like he's there.
Yeah, so you have that, and when that's going on, I mean, he's gonna get stabbed by the spike.
Yes.
And Lilli jumps out of nowhere, because he did say Lilli didn't get captured. He said right before they ended up fighting in the beginning, like, Lilli, if I get captured, you know what to do. If I get taken down, and she's been watching. She jumps out.
How loyal is Lilli? She's awesome.
Lilli's great, but takes the spike from the Witch of Winter, which then turns her into an ice kind of beast. And you have Spoonlicker say, "Oh, now you're under our control.
Your heart is frozen."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You'll even go and attack, your master.
Yes. Yeah. No, don't do it.
It's such a cool play, because that also sets up Naomi, because she looks like she got the same treatment. Will she end up attacking Ben, her little brother that she loves, and everybody else? So that whole play's going. But Klaus, he realizes, like, no, you're still a good girl. Remember that song we used to sing? And it's cool. It's the song he starts singing that breaks her out of the spell.
Well, Jim, it's cool, but what do you think? This page here is like, there's so much going on to me. It's almost like Grant tries to rush it too much. You got Lilli turning on Klaus. He's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But, it just, to me, it happens too fast. He calms it down. She's
Maybe
okay.
Maybe he could have had a spread page.
Yeah, he could have gone 3 or 4 pages of this.
We said about Dan Mora and how great he is. He's gotten even better. Like the part where Klaus starts singing and you see Lilli, it's kind of not as detailed as maybe it could have been, right? But it's a cool play where he's singing. And again, this is something that comes up in those first 7 issues as well. But he's like, sing with me. That's it. And she starts howling.
Remember the song.
And as she sings the song, it's almost like the frost goes out with the song. And it's really cool. And then you end up where Spoon Liquor, who turns totally dark, and he has all these ice giant, things behind him, yells to them, kill the dog, kill the wolf, and then bind the man. And now we're going to have a big fight. But before that even happens, then you end up having these other elves, gnomes, dwarves. They come through with Geppetto in the lead, who's holding a torch. And even the one says, put that down, you idiot. You're going to die.
Yeah,
the heat will kill you. And he's like, I don't care. And he says, I'll die fighting and I'll die saving my friend. And legitimately he does. And then the funny play of it is he doesn't get very far. He actually, it looks like he has a heart attack and just dies, as you have then these other elves there with Ben, because we saw them in the shadows come out. And I like that. Again, it's nothing real big, but I love where Santa's so happy. He's like, Stubby, Sheepcoat, Gully Gawk, and I love the names. They're so good.
Jim, what a way to go down. Geppetto is like, okay, I'll die saving my friend. I'll die. And he does, but he dies saving his friend. Come on.
He does. I wish Santa's like, you didn't really save me yet. But actually, he was bringing the other. I say elves, but they do really look more like gnomes to me.
They do. Yeah, they do a lot of gnomes.
You know what I mean? You ever remember that book that was really big, the illustration book with the gnomes, like in the 80s and 90s? You ever see that? It's really crazy. It was a sensation here in the U.S., but it was really neat. And you'd have like cross sections of their houses and things. It was crazy. But you end up where, again, Geppetto is dying, but he repeats again with the enchanted forest. Oh my God, they did this. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have let it happen, but I'm going to die. And he does. He ends up dying and says these monsters. He says, forgive me, Klaus. I built monsters. She cleared the whole enchanted forest to gather the wood that I used. Titans, Klaus, Jotuns, made to lead our army against the world. And then he dies. But this is what he has to warn Klaus about, because they are more frost giants now than even what I said before.
Is this what they are? They come out of nowhere, don't they? Are they coming out of the snow?
It looks
the landscape?
Like they just rise up. And
exactly.
It's crazy.
It's a great scene.
And the one of the craziest panels, because they are all rising up and they're all coming to attack. They're going to take down Klaus. They're going to get killed. And then you actually see Geppetto Geppetto looks like a zombie. He's just aged so much and just withered away. I'm like, oh, crap. But yeah, with that, you end up having Spoon Liquor talking a lot of crap. Hey, we're going to do this. But it says you don't have an army. You have nothing. You have a couple little gnomes and Geppetto's dead. And here you are. But this is where that play is. And it's really cool, where he says, all around us are toys I carved and brought life long ago. Enchanted wood only sleeps. All it takes is one word. And he says, awaken. Well, remember, he said sleep to put the dad to sleep. So it's kind of a cool play that he has this type of magic here. Yeah. And toys, he says, but what it is and what's really cool about it overall, he's actually those big statues of other Santas and different. So what we're going to get now is a battle of the Santas of all time to go fight these frost giants, while Klaus and the rest kind of try to take care of the Witch of Winter. And it's really cool. And at first when I'm going, because now you just have, it's so neat. Like, it's just like a council of Santas that are there. And he says, Geppetto's last word, heat. She robbed me of my powers. Let's return the favor. And they're going to go and level the playing field, he says. So all that going on, but Ben doesn't want his sister Naomi to get hurt.
That's right. We go back to the kids, don't we? Back to the kids and focus on their story.
you could even play that because you're going to have these other Santas who look really pissed. They're going to go fight the Frost Giants. You're going to have a big battle outside. But in this, you can even give the play in your mind that Naomi is getting more and more frozen. At one point, she's going to freeze to the point where they can't bring her back. Now, she may be not dead, but she'll be this frozen thing that, just is there with the Witch of Winter. And Ben's upset and goes running towards her. And she ends up, and what can turn her? You had the connection of Klaus and Lilli, and it's their song. It's because they're best friends. They have the song they sing. So that is what warms, Lily's heart to get rid of this frost. But what's going to happen with this? Because it looks like Lily's going to stab Ben with one of these ice picks. And, and she says, wouldn't you like this? It's better. I don't have to worry. I don't have to be sad about Mom. And even mentions the idea where she wants to be sad, but her friends are telling her, get over it. It's, they say 2 years it happened. It's 2 years ago. What are you so upset about? And she even says that she spends a lot of time worrying about her father and Ben as well. So it's that play where she's just a little girl, but she's trying to be so, like such an adult and trying to make
beyond her years. Yeah, exactly.
She's never been able, it seems like she's never been able to really not grieve fully, but also the idea where she thinks that she's not supposed to be sad anymore. But a thing like Christmas would make you sad, and says, when I'm like this with this frozen deal, I don't care anymore. This is great. I don't have to do this.
I miss my mom so much. It's not fair, is it, Jim?
Yeah, and that's the play. Then Ben starts crying and then says about Santa being real and, come on, I need you. I can't do this without you. And she says, I miss Mom so much. And I keep having to act like it's okay. And I wish Mom was here. And the play, it's cool because even when they say the pendants seem to be the thing that the Witch of Winter used to kind of control the deal and turn her frost like that. But it's also the pendant her mom gave her. And it's almost like, again, she misses her mom and her heart starts to get, that play. And she kind of snaps out of it. She's able to, Ben and her together are able to break that.
Well, Jim, that's one of the things I really, really enjoy about this story.
And what he does great, because there's stories that we read all the time and you don't get connected to the characters.
No, you don't.
But you have this Naomi and Ben. And just little things like the little Ben's Naomi, that's cute. And it kind of endears you to them. But they've also been kidnapped on Christmas Eve. They've lost their mom. So at this point, I actually, every time, and even when I was talking about it just a second ago, I do get a little choked up because of what that would mean.
Sure,
you feel so sad because of how great Grant writes these kids. So much just character work, even when you didn't realize there was character work. And so she is able to break out of it. And again, the whole play here is that I was worried at one point because you had what they ended up and they followed. Lily sniffed the note to Santa that Naomi wrote. That's how they got there. And he has it. And I really thought, is it going to be something crazy? Can I have my mom back for Christmas? And that's too much. That's just too much. That's nothing. So I was worried about that. And I was like, what is Grant? But it's better. I mean, legitimately, when we find she just wanted a good Christmas, this is about the craziest Christmas you could ever have. I mean, if you talk about the idea of having a crazy Christmas, I mean, being captured by the Witch of Winter.
With this Christmas, those two. There's no way, is there?
They got to team up with Santa and ends up helping them. So, all that. But yeah, so the battle outside's going on with all the, and some of these Santas are just going down, but they are just wooden toy puppets of them.
Puppets.
But they're fighting them off. I see Gandalf there. He's putting up a fight. Sexy bare-chested Santa. He gets run through. He's in trouble. I think maybe he's too worried about his six-pack. But you end up where, they even have Spoonlickers get back here. Nobody, leaves the Witch of Winter. You belong to her now. And that's where Klaus says, no, Naomi belongs to no one. They tell me heat robs your mistress of her magic, so pay heed. I have 3 runes. I have joy, I have gift, and I have fire. And at that point, you end up having one of these frost giants who's on fire, just come toppling in, and things are catching on fire. And like Geppetto ended up getting older, you do see where you start to feel, this is the craziest deal. You feel bad for the Witch of Winter because all of a sudden this fire's going. She's never said much.
No.
But when this happens, you realize, and Grant does this crazy deal where you do have where Naomi starts yelling. She was right. You end up where Klaus first says the natural order of things will take its course. He means the seasons, which we'll get. But Naomi says, but she was right about global warming. You melt the ice caps, you're declaring war on her. She only ever wanted to sleep because during the winter, she goes to sleep. It's like hibernating. The Witch of Winter just goes to sleep. That's why she's not just the Witch of Winter. She's like the Witch of Seasons because when she wakes up, normally, it's springtime. Yeah. And that's what happens. She's this whole seasonal type deal. But when she ends up where the winters are warmer and gets woken up, this pissed her off and she didn't know what to do. I mean, she kind of is not of the, you know what I mean? It's sympathetic because what Klaus comes over and says, I don't know how this will screw up the world, though. Because, almost says, no, you could be spring now. I'm like, you don't need that. But the whole play of the global warming and now this back and forth, the spring versus, the rebirth of spring versus the sleep of winter. The even yin and yang has been.
Well, she's not sure. She's like, spring. She's like asking, has the blossom come? Are the flowers in bloom? Does the sap stir in the trees? Does the ice turn to tears? Jim, it's okay. It's grand, but it's great, right? Isn't it? Come on, it's poetic.
It's great.
It's really, really good.
And whether or not, again, I always feel like when I say anything global warming, you gotta, well, if you don't believe, whatever. But this is the same thing that people have had, studies on of, say, even bears is what I always think of. But what happens, or migrating birds, because the temperatures are going up, they start doing things at a point where they shouldn't be doing them. Bears, like, they're supposed to hibernate too. And now they're waking up early because it's the heat and the one. And it's not spring yet. And so it messes up the whole play. And this is done, like I said, in a folklore type of deal.
This is like 7 years ago as well. This is written. Yeah.
So he's just playing the idea that, they have studies, the polar ice caps are melting, whether you think that's normal or whatever.
He's not lecturing you. He's just saying, possibly. This is a possibility.
And what would happen with a Witch of Winter that hibernates, that sleeps during the winter, because then when she wakes up, that's when everything wakes up with her and you get spring. But what happens is she is disturbed. So she's upset and doesn't know what to do. And Naomi says, and she's right, the idea that the Witch of Winter, you think of her as bad, she thinks she's being attacked. She says it. She says, you melt the ice caps, you're declaring war on her. She doesn't know what to do. And you see when she melts out here and kind of asks Klaus, she doesn't. She's very confused. She doesn't know what's happening.
No, she doesn't.
And that's the crazy play is when, that's why I don't think she talked too much. She was just doing this and, trying to figure out what's the play is. But you do end up at the end, like she realizes, okay, and says, does the sap stir in the trees and the ice turn to tears? Does the cold heart break? Has renewal come? And so that's the play of him having to calm her down. And the craziest deal as they go out and they're like picking up the pieces of all the Santas and things. There's the one guy's head. He's like looking at it almost like Macbeth. And he's like, oh, it makes me laugh so much. But he says, and there's a weird deal where, again, you have all this. And then Naomi out of nowhere says, I just thought of something. If the Gulf Stream breaks down, which it easily could, won't the old lady have her way in the end? I'm like, I don't know what you're really saying there. Like, all right. And I like where I think that Klaus is like, no, that'll happen some other day. We won't deal with that. We'll deal with that later. I'm like, all right, that's getting a little too much. But when he says he's going to rebuild the workshop, again, remember, he was in the Lunar War with the Moontians, and now he's back. So he's like, I'm going to light up the grotto again. We're going to make toys, not weapons. We're going to make everything great again. It's going to be awesome. You even have some of the other Santas there. You have the witch there standing with them as they watch, and they're kind of burning all the wood. And then he gathers them up in the sleigh, and they go home, and they're having a grand old time. They like go out. It's one of those classics where it's like a Disney deal where you see just the clouds, and then all of a sudden the sleigh like breaks through above the clouds, and then they take them home and drop off the kids. The dad's still asleep. When he wakes up, he thinks he's ruined Christmas because he's there in the Santa outfit. Because he wanted to do that thing where maybe they were like peeking, and he put the presents there dressed as Santa, but he's like, oh, I ruined it. Now you know Santa isn't real. And that's kind of the funny play at the end where you see the sleigh going, but it was really good. And I think I lost Gray. So I will end this. I'm actually going to give it a 9.8. I'm almost a perfect score with it. I think Gray might have passed out. That's even funnier. But I think that everybody should give it a try, give it a whirl. And if you haven't read the first 7 issues of Klaus, please go and read that. It's really, really cool. Again, it's a Santa Claus year 1. That's cool stuff. And then this is just cool because it has that, like I said, it has that Star Wars or Doctor Who feel with the play of things have already happened. There's this whole moon war that I hope we get to see some point and all that. And there is a couple other one-shots that maybe we'll do a couple more even after we get past the true holiday season, but we're still in the winter of it. So that'll be pretty cool. We'll do those a couple in a row and see if they are good as well. But with that, I will say goodbye for me and Gray from Japan. But everybody, keep reading Morrison, and we'll talk to you all later.
Thanks, Jim. This is awesome.
There you are.
Sorry
I
about
didn't hear you for a while there. I thought you were gone.
Yeah, I had to run for a second.
Okay, well, he is back to say goodbye, but that is it, and we'll talk to you all later.